Respect the process. Another week, another round of news.
Sure.
That typically Alabama football does not have this time of year.
You say that, but I'm gonna. I know
Okay,
where
come
you're
on,
going.
counter me.
No, I'm just simply gonna say, I bet if you go back, at least one assistant leaves.
Yeah.
This time every year.
Coordinator or assistant?
Assistant.
Okay.
But the difference is, Nick Saban was the guy that stayed.
Yeah. Well, and that's really all that mattered.
That's all that mattered, although people panicked every year. What happened? I'm not sitting here saying Kalen DeBoer is automatically Nick Saban. Okay? Time will tell
Thank
who
goodness.
that is. Oh, yeah, thank goodness. Are you crazy? What I am saying is we hired Kalen DeBoer
Yes.
to be the head coach, which involves having to hire assistants, which involves losing assistants.
And
By
Nick
no
Saban
means-
famously lost assistants. He had a turnover
Guys
unlike
left
anyone
a lot.
else because it's a difficult job.
It is a grind.
You learn a ton. It is a grind, and it is not for everybody to work for Nick Saban.
It's not. And with the situations being what they were, if the coordinator, if Grubb and the O-line coach had left to go to Georgia,
Yeah.
if they'd left to go to Ole Miss, if they'd left to go to Michigan,
Really any other collegiate program.
just about any other,
Yeah.
you would go, okay. These guys left in order to stay where they were, in essence.
Yeah.
It was a career opportunity to move to the NFL, which, by the way, there's a lot of dudes doing these days.
Well, and especially after Ryan Grubb having worked for, and we're talking about Ryan Grubb, offensive court, who had never officially been announced as the offensive coordinator that was coming with Kalen DeBoer. They had worked together for 16 years. He obviously has worked in college football for longer than that.
He was in the offensive coordinator's office, let's put it that way.
Sometimes you maybe start to think, I've been pretty successful here. And a lot of head college coaches do this too. I've been pretty successful here. I wonder if I can do it at the next level. And if the opportunity comes around.
And if you can do it without having to sell your house.
Even better.
And I have no idea about his family dynamic, but if he's got kids that are high school, middle school, elementary, whatever it may be.
Or a wife
still
that doesn't
in school,
want to have to
doesn't wanna
leave.
move.
Yeah.
You don't know what circumstances are and family dynamics may be. Again, I remind you, it's still fairly new. What is it, 6 weeks since
I think it's
Kalen
been
DeBoer
literally
was,
30 days. I think we are just eclipsing the window of Nick Saban announcing his retirement.
So I again say, when you think of Kalen DeBoer's family, sitting on a Saturday afternoon in a building they've never been in, Bryant-Denny Stadium, at a press conference surrounded by people, the overwhelming majority of which they'd never met. And it was 5 days prior. 5 days prior. Here we are on Saturday. It was on Monday night that they're representing Washington, playing for the dream of a lifetime at that level to win a national championship in football. That doesn't happen. On Wednesday, you hear that Nick Saban is retiring, and on Friday, you're on a plane to another part of the country that you've never lived to go take over. Maybe the most storied program in college football history, certainly in modern history, recent history. Yeah, it's a lot. And they managed it, but for the assistants' families, it's the same thing. It's a challenge too. And a month later is still a lot of upheaval. You got kids, again, if there are kids involved with it, maybe you're finishing up the school year. All I say is forget what the job is. Think about your job. And if you had to move cross country and even doubled your pay, but you're asked to move cross country, and by the way, you've got 24 hours or less to decide, and you got to have everybody moved in a week.
Well, and what we got.
How many of you could do it?
We also have to consider people that, yes, we've been thinking about doing this. This happened within, as you said, a week of we are the offensive staff for Kalen DeBoer at Washington. And then on Friday, we are now the offensive staff for Alabama. With very little notice did they and their families have this information. I guess the one thing that is curious about this, but let me get back first real quick about Ryan Grubb. He also, keep in mind that he initially put his name in the hat for the Washington job. I know that he had, once DeBoer had announced that he was coming to Alabama, when Grubb kind of wrote his letter to the families and to the Washington family saying, I'm leaving, even though I will not be your head coach. So something to that effect of saying that he had wanted that was something, and it would be a natural thought that with the success that the two of them have had, that he might ascend DeBoer. So you have that kind of factored in. The peculiar thing is the timing, I think, for a lot of people, with the signing period having just ended, the 30-day window for the transfer portal just closing for the Alabama players, because when Nick Saban leaves, they had 30 days to consider. I think that's what puts a sour taste in some people's mouth. I
understand that. I don't disagree with it.
Yeah.
It is the business of it. It is the nature of it now. I don't think the guy moved to Tuscaloosa knowing automatically that he was going to wind up at Seattle. Okay?
That's a good point. Yeah.
I don't think he does that.
Yeah.
I think he goes with the intent of taking the job. He starts working. He starts recruiting. He gets a phone call. Are you interested? Let's talk. Okay? The other guy's got other people to talk to as well. At that point, there's not as much of a rush for the NFL job, because it's not like they got to go recruit.
No.
It's not like they need him there 2 weeks ago. Go help Coach DeBoer get this thing started, and then we'll figure it out afterwards. And I think that's probably what happened. I don't know the specifics, but that is my guess. You keep the job you've got until the other job. He wouldn't back out of the Alabama job if he's not got another job in place. And he wouldn't have stayed at Alabama if the Seahawks job was done, is my guess.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see now where Kalen DeBoer goes with this in terms of promoting from within, bringing someone like Kirby Moore, that his name has been thrown about, who's the offensive coordinator at Missouri right now. He has a couple guys that he could elevate from within his staff to co-offensive coordinators. Or, there's also been talk that this is his offense. He could call the plays. I would have to believe, though, that is a lot for him to consider on game day.
I agree.
The ultimate game manager, and then you're also calling the plays on your own offense.
I think that would be very tough. I do think it's his offense, much like what we ran at Alabama prior to his arrival. Nick Saban's offense, Nick Saban's defense. He allows the coordinator to put a twist on it. They got to adapt to the terminology that's already in-house. But we're bringing you in to show certain ideas and adapt what you do to what we do. We're not going to chuck everything we believe in, is the philosophy in that building. I would imagine that's the exact same thing for Kalen DeBoer, or very, very similar. So he wants somebody that will run what he wants run. There's not quite the same comfort level as a guy who's run it for him for the last several years. But I think it's still... I'm not going to worry about it until it's actually a problem.
Right.
And again, it's not like if you had lost Kalen DeBoer after a month, that's a concern.
Right.
You didn't lose Kalen DeBoer. You lost an important piece of his staff, but not the only piece of his staff. And
but I think for
not
some
a
people,
part that can't be replaced. And I'm not saying that it doesn't matter at all, because it does. I'm simply saying, what are you worried about right now when you don't know what it was going to look like anyway? Most of the fan base, and myself included, Had no clue who Coach Grubb was until a month ago.
Right.
None. That doesn't mean he wasn't a great coach. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean he's not deserving. But we tend to get into this where we start sweating the loss of familiarity, which doesn't mean that in the long run things may not work out better for you. I understand that pretty well.
Alabama likes familiarity.
Everybody
faithful likes
familiarity
yes.
and stability. Nobody, well, I'm not going to say everybody.
A lot of people don't yet.
Most people do not like
constant change. Unless you're Bobby Petrino, and he loves constant change.
I'm going to drink my coffee and leave Bobby Petrino conversations alone.
The one thing, as when you look at this will be something that Coach DeBoer will have to pay more attention to, at least in the short term.
It's an early distraction.
Because he had turned the keys over to Grubb. He's like, you run this. This is a well-oiled machine.
You know what I want done.
Yeah. If you want to talk through anything, that's good. But for the most part, this is your baby.
Yeah.
So initially, this is going to be one more thing that he has to deal with. And then also getting somebody in, just because the portal does open again. Mm-hmm. And so it's not only retaining your players, but looking at, okay, what else do we need to put in place, either in terms of recruiting or trying to bring somebody else in?
I was thinking it's like moving furniture
mm-hmm.
into a new home. Hey, I got bad news. We dropped the kitchen table and chairs and most of the frying pans. Okay, well, that's one more thing we got to get done.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you can't go ahead and move into the house and that the house ain't going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's, it's more work involved. You don't know exactly what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
But could wind up being better than he had. Again, that's not a shot at all.
No.
At Coach Grubb, it's not trying to paint everything as perfectly rosy. I just don't think it's a problem until you find out later. You don't know if it's a problem or not until it becomes one.
Good point.
And at the moment, it ain't a problem. We ain't had a practice yet. It hadn't impacted recruiting, to my knowledge, yet. So, and even if it does it mean it can't be overcome by the time you play the opener? Certainly by the time you get through the season and what everything looks like. It's always easy. Again, I've talked about this before. I'm not putting Kalen DeBoer on Nick Saban's historic level, okay? But I will say the reminder again, when Nick Saban left East Lansing, Michigan, to go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to be the head coach at LSU after being the head coach at Michigan State, he sent a plane back to bring all of his assistants. Not one. 0 were on the plane. They stayed to be on Bobby Williams' staff. 4 years later, Nick Saban's holding up the Crystal Trophy in New Orleans at the Superdome, having won a national championship with the Tigers, and Bobby Williams and that staff was released that year because they didn't win enough ball games. Yeah. Give it a rest. There's enough to sweat when it's truly a problem. Don't sweat stuff until it becomes one.
That's a good point. We have heard that Coach Grubb will be taking Scott Huff, who had been the offensive line coach with DeBoer's staff, that he will be going with him to the Seattle Seahawks. So that will be another position,
really good coach.
Or
tough coach to replace.
Another coach to replace, because I don't know if you promote from within at that point, or you are going to have to go out and find yourself an offensive line coach.
And those aren't easy to find.
No.
But here's the thing that we didn't talk a lot about. There were a lot of really good coaches who wound up in Tuscaloosa under Nick Saban, even on his last staff. But some of the hires that he got were not necessarily the best possible hires around the country, because there were guys that were a little concerned about every season being the last season for Coach Saban. And even though you don't go there thinking you're going to stay 10 years for Nick Saban, you may not want to move your family from a really good spot for only 1 year if you're at a comparable school or program. I still think you're going to have you're going to have some guys who are really good, who are going to go from what may be perceived as comparable programs to, or maybe up-and-coming stars in the profession that will absolutely jump at the chance to work for a guy like Kalen DeBoer, especially at a place like Alabama.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And also, it really is hard to project because there is the coaching world and college football. It truly is a fruit basket turnover at this point because you have people making all sorts of different moves because they don't want to deal with this or they do want to have a part of that. I think the biggest one right now, everybody is kind of not scratching their heads, but looking at the Chip Kelly move.
Oh, no doubt.
Leaving UCLA to go and be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State.
Yeah.
He may at some point come forth and truly tell everybody why he made that move, but it is one that people say, well, it could be he doesn't want to have to deal with recruiting, or well, he'll still have to recruit at Ohio State, which
right.
is, but
it's a lot easier to recruit at Ohio State than it is at UCLA. He was going to have what was going to be one of the lesser jobs. As crazy it is to think about,
and will be traveling transcontinentally at that point from UCLA over to play in the Big Ten schedule.
It was a job and I don't mean this disrespectfully towards him because it's such a tough job now, and was before, but he's struggling to be successful in that league when you're one of the tradition-rich programs in that conference.
Yeah, in the Pac-12.
In the Pac-12. Now all the other dynamics, plus they really don't care at UCLA at the level. You're number 2 on your own campus.
Yeah.
Basketball is still king, and they can't get that completely right. So that one, on the knee-jerk reaction, I was guilty of this too, is to go, wow, look at what's happening with the profession. No, I think that's kind of isolated, but it is telling that people are understanding, especially guys that are maybe on the downside of their careers. Mm-hmm. Is this really how I want to do it?
Right.
People will say that that's a lot of Coach Saban's thinking. He still had the energy, the way it was set up, to still do it. But with so many changes and the fact that it is as chaotic a set of circumstances it is, with almost no rules and certainly no governing body to oversee it properly, then it was a good time. It was time to hang it up. But I think a lot of guys like that are. That doesn't mean that there aren't a ton of great coaches who are going to go, you know what, this is still the route I want to go. I still want to work with the younger guys than I do the NFL, especially if the money can be comparable.
I will be interested to see, since last week you and I were together, Coach Saban accepting the position with ESPN to work on College Game Day as an analyst. I will be interested to see how candid he gets, how honest he is about certain issues within college football, and how he assesses players and coaches, because he does not like to be critical of other coaches necessarily, but that's going to be part of what I think he might be asked to do.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, no surprise whatsoever that that's the route he went. I thought maybe, possibly, he sits out a year if they want to go one more season, with Lee Corso. To the contrary, I think they kept Lee Corso in the position that they were because they knew they were going to hire Nick Saban as soon as it was over.
Yeah.
As soon as he was done coaching, it was his. We're going to continue to try to get what we can. And I don't mean that disrespectfully towards Lee, but
it was time.
It had been time. It had been
past time, to be honest with you.
It made sense to maybe keep him a year or two longer if you knew you're going to get Coach Saban fairly soon. So they get him. He will be fantastic. He was pretty candid on things before. Mm-hmm. I think he will continue to be so.
And I hope he is, because he will be. He is. There, I don't even know that there's a way to say what kind of addition he is to that cast, because he is going to be phenomenal.
No question. Kelly, here's the thing. I think that while he'll be candid, I think it'll be great because it doesn't necessarily mean that he'll bash somebody when they do wrong. I think he can give better clarity.
That's a good point, yeah.
To maybe why they're thinking the way they are, or maybe why something's not working if it doesn't.
Yeah.
I say this all the time. When I was doing a talk show in Tuscaloosa, and when I've been a guest on shows, and they want to talk about something that may have, when I say controversial, I just mean that deals with performance or lack thereof of a coach or whatever. And I've had to deal with that a good bit, especially as the basketball announcer. Mm-hmm. I've had to, had some seasons prior to Nate Oates' arrival where you deal with that. And what I said is, look, you're asking for my perspective. Mm-hmm. It may not be yours. And while it's 100% accurate that I'm paid by Alabama, not directly by the university, but by Learfield, which is contracted by Bama to do the games. Yes, I'm the Bama announcer, and I'm not going to go out of my way to bash somebody, especially a coach. But just because I'm giving you a reason that something may not be working or that they're not as successful doesn't mean I'm wrong. And just because you're unbiased doesn't mean you're right.
Yeah.
So it may be true that some things that I say may not push the envelope as much as others do that don't have to walk in and face those people, but I'm also pretty close to it. I can probably give you a perspective that's different from yours, and you know what? It may be right. Doesn't mean that I am, but there's a good chance I probably am because you know what? I'm a little closer to it. I might actually know more about what's going on than you do. I don't in every case, but in a lot of it, I do.
He will be. It will be interesting and different to see him sitting there to see what all he does take part in, and because college game day,
he'll have fun.
Oh,
he
yeah.
will. If he knows and I dealt with this with his TV show. Kelly, if he's committing time to something, he wants it to be great. Mm-hmm. Was he fired up about doing TV or radio shows? He wasn't fired up with anything that didn't factor into winning. But if he was going to have his name attached to something, he wanted it to be good.
Well, there's no halfway with him.
There's none. And he may not watch that TV show, but by golly, Terry was, or friends were, or family was, and it would get back to him. And, Jim knows this, Dunaway. He did the show before I did. You feel the pressure to be prepared and to do your best because you know that just like anything else that's attached to his name and to Alabama, there is the expectation of it being the best that it can possibly be. Mm-hmm. And you better be ready, And
think he'll have the highest suit budget? Him or Reese? I don't know. I
got a feeling it's Reese. I got a feeling it'll be Reese. Okay. Easily. It'll be Reese. I think there'll be some new stuff in the wardrobe, but I think there'll be a lot of familiarity to what you see on Saturdays as well.
I'm looking forward to it. It took no one by surprise, but as you said, probably the timeline of it, the fact that it did happen as quickly and that he is going to be a part of it next season. Yeah. Again, probably a lot of people thought he might take a little chunk of time out, but I don't know that he does well with time out.
Well, time off for you and I and time off for him are two very different things.
Well, he obviously does speaking engagements, but do you think that will also be something that increases during his time off?
Well, I think it will. You'll see it spread throughout the calendar year. I don't know that he'll do many more.
Okay.
But I think he will do some, and I think you'll see him do some quarterback clubs.
Yeah.
Again, they're going to be high paying, not for him, but for his charity.
Right.
I think it'll still be, just a guess, he'll still do things for Nick's kids or for whatever charity they choose to be behind. He'll do things for friends, and when he does those things, he's really good. One of the most, among the most enjoyable things that I got to do over the last few years, and it happened on multiple occasions where he would be asked to speak at an event, and I'd get a phone call to say, hey, Coach committed to doing this, but he doesn't want to give a speech. He would like for you to be there and do it as a town hall. I did that for multiple events, and it was always an honor to be asked.
Do you just, I mean, obviously you're pitching him right to his wheelhouse, but do you...
It's absolutely in his wheelhouse.
Does he give you a heads up?
No,
Okay.
No, wouldn't necessarily, but I might have somebody tell me a couple of things. You know, Josh Maxson was great with athletic communications, and when we did, it got to be where Josh had a trust factor with me, because it's the kind of thing where if I screwed up, Coach may not get after me, but he'd get after Josh.
It didn't look good for anybody. Yes, yeah.
But there were things that, Josh may give me a heads up. Hey, Coach might want to talk about this, but it didn't happen a lot. I kind of knew the route to go, and especially in those town hall things, the Nick at Noon, especially, you're taking questions from the audience. We knew how the format was going to work, and I would do a few that were along the lines of what you might expect, softballs or whatever. There may be some things that I played off of. If there was somebody in the room, former player or whatever, whatever popped into my head, but I try not to do anything that put him in a bad light or threw him off guard. I just, I tried to make it interesting for everybody. Yeah. But Coach didn't mind. When I say challenged, I don't mean in a bad way, but he's a very thoughtful person. I'll give you one example in particular, and I may have talked about this on this show before. But I was filling in for Eli on Hey Coach 7 years ago, and it was the Thursday night deal. Eli had an event that he was doing for the athletic department, and Vern Lundquist was the media guest that night. Well, I'd already made up my mind. I'm getting out of the way for the most part. I'm going to get us in and out of the breaks. I said, Vern, talk to Coach. We'll have some other things, but I want you to talk to Coach tonight. He's comfortable with you. You guys visit, and I'll get us in and out of the breaks. But there was one coming out of a break. I said, Coach, I got a question for you. I said, how in the world do you raise a 16-year-old daughter? Because I know you've done that already. And I said, as of today, I've got one as well. And Vern goes, whoa. Oh, and I'm
going to get out of the way of this one, too.
And, you might think 15, 30-second question. He gave about a 2-minute
Do you have any? Because I've got a 16-year-old daughter right now, too. So
we'll talk later.
Okay.
But he went for about 2 full minutes on parenting. I mean, it was fantastic. And when he finished, I said, Coach, that's fantastic, and I really appreciate it. I will also say that if I don't get a picture of you with the birthday girl, I'm going to have to spend the night with you and Terry because I'm not going to be allowed to go home.
Done.
And he said, we'll make sure that happens. Well, sure enough, next commercial break, as he was always signing autographs, he's telling one of the security guys, where's Chris's daughter? Where's Chris? And he made sure
That's
that
awesome.
He got that picture with her. So I tell you those things to say, the man's really insightful. Even if it was a 7-year-old kid, Coach, what advice do you give me playing Pee Wee football? Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't just, do your best, practice hard, blah,
Listen
blah,
to your
blah.
mom and dad and eat your vegetables.
Which there's nothing wrong. All of those things are true. He would talk to the kid. Mm-hmm. And everybody's listening, hanging on every word.
Because everybody says he's so great at recruiting. We don't ever get to see, as I say, the vast majority of us don't ever get to see behind the Coach Saban.
And there were so many times on his regular TV show that he would give an answer after the game that I'd get so absorbed in what he's saying that I'd almost forget what I was supposed to do next. What segment are we going to next? Great stuff. Going to miss it. It's great to have new challenges and professionally and from everything that I've heard and seen. Kalen DeBoer is going to be great to work with. But what I've had the privilege of doing for a large part of the last 17 years is something I will always cherish.
I know. That's why we keep you around.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Glad somebody does.
We also we're going to pivot to basketball because it was an interesting
Keep your
week.
pivot foot down.
Yeah, it was an interesting week last week. Last Wednesday night,
Ooh.
61 fouls. Am I getting that number correct in the Auburn game?
Therapist says don't talk about it.
It was
85 free throws between the two.
the
Let me back up. 85 free throws.
Mm-hmm.
Half of Auburn's points came from the free throw line. Almost half of Alabama's came from the free throw line.
the first 15 minutes of the first half were engaging. I enjoyed listening. I enjoyed watching.
It was fun. Even though Bama was down, it was a fun game to call.
After that, when they made up the 14-point gap, tied it up, and then they go to break at halftime, down 14 again.
Yeah, because of the under 4 media timeout, it was all Auburn. They finished great. And Auburn, to their credit, never let Alabama get within arm's reach. There was never that next run by Alabama.
Auburn did what they had to do. Alabama played sloppy. They did not take care of the basketball.
They didn't. And they didn't adapt to the way the game was called. And I'll leave it there. Because to go further would be taken away from Auburn, and I don't want to do that. They earned it. They would have beaten Alabama. They played a great game, regardless. But that was not as entertaining a game, regardless of the final score, from our perspective, as it should have been. The ability to bounce back from that and get ready to go and play an early game again on the road against a team that you'd popped once before but had played better and was still dangerous in LSU, and to pull away from them. Alabama didn't just slop around for 30 minutes. LSU did some good things. Bama didn't play its best, but LSU did some good things.
And they still scored 92 points. And I think leading into that, that's what has a lot of people concerned is Alabama's defense. And they're not going to be able to win games against, and they have 7 conference games left. Texas A&M coming in on Saturday for an 11 o'clock tip, who just beat Tennessee. Granted, it was at home. But to beat the likes of the teams that they still have ahead of them, defense is going to be...
It needs to be better.
Yeah.
That being said, I'll bet you an ice cold Coca-Cola that if we score 109, we won't lose much.
No.
Part of that was tempo and pace, and you knew even if Nate wanted to get more stops, and once they did get stops, that's what allowed them to pull away. With
shutting down Baker was big. Once they
huge.
Could shut down Baker in the second half, that was...
he had 22 in the first half. I think he had only 2 in the second, maybe 4. But, excuse me, that was a 1 or 2 point deficit, maybe a 1 point deficit with 9.5 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And I look up and we're up 18.
Yep.
That was phenomenal what they did.
LSU led at the half, had as much as a 10-point lead in the second half. But they were able to come back.
And it was to go from a 1 point deficit to Alabama going for 1 point deficit to winning it going away like they did. That was an impressive finish. They got it done on the defensive end, but LSU couldn't keep pace offensively. They were able to match for a while, but then you could just tell they knew we're not good enough to run with you. You may be able to run a sprint with somebody out of the gate, but when you realize,
40 minutes.
Oh my goodness, I can't keep up this pace.
Not terribly nicked up right now, but obviously, everybody gets a little tired because we've reached that point in the season. Alabama has the week off. They don't play again until Saturday, but I guess just rest more than anything else. They're not really trying to get anybody healed up and back on the floor.
That's true.
So,
and
knock on wood.
Yeah, right now that's Muhammad Wagi is going to battle that foot injury, ankle injury, whatever it is. The rest of the way, that's just the nature of it. But everybody else seems to be in pretty good shape. It was huge for Nick Pringle to play as well as he did.
He had a good game on Saturday.
He really did.
Yep.
He looked rusty, didn't play well in the game before against Auburn, but you could tell he was much more dialed in. Now again, the front court for LSU is not the front court of Auburn either. and there were 1,500 people max.
That was
10 minutes before, 5 minutes before tip off.
TV was not showing a lot of the crowd, and
that's 'cause there wasn't a lot of
that's
crowd to
why.
show.
Yeah, it looked like it was a pretty dismal turnout. Mardi Gras will do that to you down in Louisiana.
It will, and I apologize. This is not Mardi Gras. This is just this time of year.
You sure?
For me, so I apologize for the hacking. But
you had those beads in your back pocket earlier, so
you don't want to. I earned those. Okay?
I know.
But with Alabama, said it all along. It's going to be its best basketball still to come. It's really good when it's really good. They can't afford the nights like they had against Auburn or against Tennessee. When you get later, well, first of all, if you want to win an SEC title.
Yeah. And right now they still lead the league with South Carolina. They have a share of the title with South Carolina.
The only two losses they've got are to teams that at the time they played them were in the top 12 in the country. And they also own a win over Auburn, obviously. And they'll get Tennessee at home for a chance to avenge that one. What they can't do, what they couldn't afford to do, and Nate told me in the pregame, he goes, we're treating this like it's the league championship game because if we lose, the chances of us winning are not very good, which is, I thought, really refreshing to hear a coach say and be that honest about a game that obviously you take them one at a time. Okay, that's fine. But this one is a big one because you're going to have to do something maybe I'm not going to say phenomenal or shocking to offset that later, but you have to do, I think 3 losses wins the league outright. 4 may get you a share. But when Alabama has to play Florida, who just popped Auburn twice.
And they go to Gainesville.
And they get them at home.
Yep.
They will get Tennessee at home. They will get Kentucky at Rupp.
Yep. And then we go to Oxford,
Mississippi. Yep. And on their best night, they're dangerous.
And then Arkansas.
And Arkansas, who's playing better. But I would love for it to come down, even though Arkansas is capable of, playing out of their minds and getting it done. I would love to go to the final game of the regular season with a title on the line in Arkansas, all that stands in your way, because that would be so much fun to cut down the nets with them still in the building.
Think that they can only afford to drop one more on the road? One, possibly 2. I mean, they're going to have to win at least one of the last 3 games, the road games that they've got.
I don't think there's any doubt, and none of them will be easy. But I still think 4 gets you a share of the title.
Yeah.
4 losses. And
they have 2 right now in the conference.
You got a share of the league title, and just 3, and you win it outright. Sitting there, everybody but Bama and South Carolina have 3, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
At least 3.
More than 3.
Have at least 3.
Yeah. I have at least 3. Excuse me. You're right. So 3 is going to get you the league title. South Carolina is going to lose somewhere. As good as they have played, as well as they've played, they're not going to run the table.
No.
I'll be shocked if they do. Tip of the hat to them if they do.
Yeah.
But I just don't see that happening. It does show you how tough it is to win on the road, though, against good teams. Remember, Bama lost by 20-plus, basically.
Yes.
Tennessee. It may have been under 20, but we were down more than that very late. Same thing with Auburn. South Carolina, 20-point loss to us in Tuscaloosa. Will be interesting to see what happens when Tennessee comes to town. Not at all predicting a 20-point win over the Vols, but you don't have to beat them by 20. You got to beat them by 1, and it'll count the same.
Okay, so that means that you get the week off as well then, resting the pipes until...
Pretty much.
Yeah.
We got some shows. We got it's Monday as you and I are visiting. I'll have Coach Oates' radio show tonight. I'll have his TV show on Thursday. Then we're back home on Thursday. On Saturday, as you said. And I get to do some dad stuff the next few days. So I hopefully get over this crud that's got me sounding just
I was going to say, we're still in February. It'll just hopefully, I know.
This is round 2 in a month for me, so I'm ready to feel better.
I know. Okay, well, Saturday we will listen to you at 11 o'clock tip, if I'm not mistaken.
10 o'clock pregame on the network, 11 o'clock tip time
Which
at
I know
Coleman
you
Coliseum.
enjoy. You as a broadcaster enjoy the 11 o'clock tip.
I do, especially on the road now.
Yeah.
Home's a little different, but definitely like it on the road.
Yeah.
Get back home, pretty nice. That was crazy. With charter flights and all, we played. Where did we play Saturday? Baton Rouge?
Yeah, y'all were down in Baton Rouge on Saturday.
It was, you talk about a quick trip. I think we were wheels up at 4. I went to practice with the team. We came back to the hotel, had dinner there, got to bed at the arena at 9, on the air at 10, tipped at 11, plane lands in Tuscaloosa. I'm home sitting in my recliner at 4.
That's nuts. I mean, that's a whole world that
it's phenomenal.
I could see how people get used to it and why they do spend money to do it.
Team charters are the way to go when they work. When they don't, that's frustrating, just like anything else. But man, when you've won and you get that turnaround, that was pretty nice. Man. Hope we'll see a packed house. This team deserves it. Saturday, Texas A&M. Get some stuff done. Spend the day in Tuscaloosa. Enjoy yourself a little bit, and then hopefully packed and in between. Chris Stewart .online.
Chris Stewart .online.
My boy Philip Pritchard's got the new domain, and instead of the Yahoo, I think you still may be able to find it. But Chris Stewart .online.
Okay, with 2 S's.
That's right.
Still 2 S's.
Still easier.
I know, but before we leave, we always have to have something
Even
to get
with
us.
the hack,
but something to get us till Saturday.
Even with the hack, I tell you, roll tide.
For Chris Stewart, I am Kelly Hunter. We want to thank Scott Forrester back there taking excellent care of us. Everybody at the next round, you can catch them every single morning and on demand, as well as everybody on Disrupt the Media. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here.